a lot of the stuff that we do, the thing that takes time is we check the lease and the 1500 interpretations, because there might be an argument. Whereas, what is the most common and most forceful interpretation? Someone might claim that it's fraud. Well, let's check the witness. Was it done properly? Is it the right witness? Money laundering. Oh, no, we think this person has processed a crime though. So most of the things we do, and I say this, is litigation backwards. And while there are things that can be done to sped up, and I think we've talked about some really common sense ones, some things take as long as they take. You can't speed up.
Welcome to Listen Without Prejudice, your exclusive gateway to one of London's leading law firms. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories, insights, and expertise that make Bishop Sewell a trusted name in the legal community. Join us as we explore everything from the latest legal trends and case studies to practical advice on residential and commercial property, corporate and commercial law, employment, family and divorce matters, private clients, and dispute resolution. Whether you're a legal professional, a client, or simply curious about the law, Listen Without Prejudice is here to inform, inspire, and engage. Now, without further ado, let's get the conversation started.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Tom Wilkinson and I head up the residential conveyancing team here at Bishop Sewell, and I'm joined today by one of my colleagues in my department, Charlie Davidson. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Tom. So you couldn't get anyone else. It's just me. There's literally no one else you could talk to about this, because the problem is we're talking about a topic today which I think we could spend a few days talking about.
But only if we're slowing down conveyancing, which is not the idea for this at all, because all we wish to talk about is ways to speed up conveyancing, and in particular, the question that most clients have, why does it take so long? I suppose the thing to kick off with would be to give some of the reasons why conveyancing can be delayed. Would you like to start with that?
Well, I think if you wanted your conveyancing transaction to take 5 minutes, we're very happy to do it in 5 minutes. We won't be liable for anything. We won't be advising you. You won't be able to sue us if anything goes wrong. And quite frankly, it'll be a waste of time. So maybe don't do that.
I think that's fair play. You are right that actually the act of conveyancing itself, changing legal title and changing ownership of a property, could be done certainly within a day, and that's after checking to make sure that the person that says they own it actually owns it. But the world of conveyancing is much wider than simply changing legal ownership.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, you in particular, beyond being, our learned leader, head of residential, you're also our in-house environmental bod who looks after everything, and even you're finding it bewildering, the increasing things that we're in charge of now. We have to be accountants, we have to be border agents, we have to be matrimonial counsellors, environmental scientists. It's getting a bit broad now, and I think that's one of the reasons things are taking so long.
That is certainly true. There is, particularly if you look at the environmental sphere, a sort of obligation on solicitors to try and look at many things, as I said, outside conveyancing, of which future-proofing of a property, whether it's likely to be at risk of flooding or various other climate-related concerns, is one. And some of that is navel-gazing and sort of crystal ball gazing, because we don't quite know what the future will hold.
Unfortunately, as lawyers, we're never allowed to be wrong. We have to be right all the time. Even if it was actually impossible for us to know that this would have been an issue, we're still liable. So that's why we always have to be, at least on paper, a tad conservative.
Potentially, yes. And also our overriding aim, obviously, is to get things right for the clients, but also to give them as much help and assistance throughout the whole sort of gamut of moving house rather than just conveyancing of a property.
So we had a bit of a discussion about this. The idea is, I think we came down with the three main actors in a conveyancing transaction being the client, the estate agent, and the lawyers. And I think we had a bit of a chat about what those three groups of people can be doing to speed things up. And I think let's start with the one that everyone wants to hear about. What can a client do to speed up their conveyancing transaction?
No, it's a great place to start. I think, if there were two words to sum it up, I'd say be prepared. That alongside the excitement of having your offer accepted if you are a buyer, or having an offer in for your property if you're a seller and want to move elsewhere, you need to get sort of all the documentation that you can together. In particular, in the current environment that we're in, there is a great importance towards ID, not just covering who you are and tying you to ownership of the property, but also, particularly if you are a buyer, showing your source of funds specifically for purchase of that transaction. This is your own savings as well as any mortgage lending, but also where do those savings come from, the source of wealth more generally.
I always find this, I know you do as well, is that clients, by the time, particularly not buying clients, by the time they've come to us, they've been asked by, I don't know, estate agents, brokers, other people, asking them, do you have the money? Do you have the money? You do have the money. You can afford this. And then they come to us expecting to answer the same question. And our question is, no, we know you have the money. I'm not your mum. You're a grown-up. Of course you have the money. How did you get this money? What's it been doing for 3 months? Where's the paperwork? Is there any other people coming involved? Is the gift from your grandmother the result of a meth lab? And when people don't have this paperwork to hand, it slows things down, particularly if they put all the money into one bank account and they move it around every 5 minutes.
There's certainly that. And I think one of the things, talking to the meth lab, to pick up on is not that we ever think that we're likely to have clients that have had walk-on parts in Breaking Bad, but more that our regulator and various other financial bodies want to make sure that we are able to prove that they're not, rather than think that they are.
It's one of the rare occasions where we can't hide behind the firm. It is actually personally liable. So, Thom and Charlie, if we sign off on something and it turns out not to be on the up and up, we are potentially in trouble ourselves. It's not just the firm. So it's very serious.
Indeed, yes. And the other point to raise out of this is that even if you have been through a similar process with the lender, the estate agents, we are not allowed to rely on their investigations and say, well, they've done it, therefore job done. We actually have to make sure that we have this demonstrated by you directly to us.
And the other way around as well. The estate agent can't rely on our checks. They're supposed to do it themselves.
Precisely.
I think the other thing, though, is just the level of communication. Clients, which is weird, though, because in this day and age, when I started, WhatsApp wasn't a thing. And I don't think, did you have phones back when I started, Tom? Did you have phones?
Yes, it was very much like sort of broadsword calling Danny Boy and where he goes there, but we were able to.
No, it's just when you can't get hold of clients, though. If you want a transaction to move apace, though, and we send you an email saying that we need instructions, obviously, we don't want people to rush through things and just send a response without considering it. But please don't wait, I'll get to it at the end of next week, though, because that will potentially hold the matter up. And then we're stuck there going, well, we're waiting on instructions. Why are you waiting? I don't know. The client hasn't got back to me. What do you want me to do about it? So clients, please be responsive. If the lawyer is emailing you, it is not to ask you about the most recent picnic or something. They need instructions.
And indeed, the corollary of that is we will endeavour always to get back to you promptly. I suppose picking up on the information requirements, there is one thing which would really help, and this is sort of seen in lots of the reforms that have been attempted with conveyancing, is to move information up front. Where we all, or a number of us conveyancers, remember home information packs and various other failed initiatives. But one of the things that would be really helpful in the early days of discussions between solicitors and clients is disclosure. And in terms of, if you are a seller, if there are issues that you have or might have with the property or which came up on your purchase, let us know, because we can help manage and address those as soon as possible. And then likewise, we've touched on the source of funds and source of wealth. If you have funding concerns, funding timetables, if you are reliant on your parents selling somewhere before you get a inheritance ahead of time, or whatever it might be, let us know. We are on your side. We will help. But the earlier any difficulties are identified, the earlier we can help you deal with them, resolve them, etc.
Well, it's all about managing expectations. People don't mind knowing about the speed bump if they can see it a mile away. But if it literally comes out of nowhere, it is jarring, and everyone gets very unnerved about things, because it is ultimately a human transaction we're dealing with here. It's very rare that we're dealing with large corporations swapping assets around. It's normally Mr. and Mrs. Smith selling to, other people. So getting everything up front does help. But here's an idea. Since we've got, hopefully, we've got some clients here listening to us. So how can we teach them how to chase us without being that client? What's a nice way of them to sort of, I haven't heard from Tom in a week, and Charlie's ghosted me for the last 6 months. How can I chase without being that client?
You mean, how can they chase effectively?
How can they? Yes, of course. I do beg your pardon. Yes.
I think that'll be very rare, in the sense that we're always endeavouring to get back to people promptly. But in rare instances where we've been dealing with other matters, other bits, or there is some reason for a delay, normally it's information coming across to us. then please do pick up the phone, drop us an email, and we will get back to you. But one of the other things is if we provide information and it doesn't seem clear, just let us know, because sometimes we can think that we have explained that this will take a while, but if, beauty being the eye of the beholder, etc., it would be if you sort of have questions coming after correspondence from us, please let us know and we will try and translate it from legalese into English.
Well, no, the best one that happened to me was last week. I was sort of just reporting, very straightforward, a house in the Cotswolds, and someone, selling with full title guarantee. To any lawyer listening, that's just like, well, that's normal, don't think about it, off you go. Client phoned up to simply ask me, what is full title guarantee? And I suddenly went, oh, he doesn't understand that. And then you had a bit of a conversation. He said, oh, it's something to worry about. No, it's perfectly normal. That's what it is. It's nothing to do with the property. It's about the contract. And it's the joke, really. The one thing worse than a client phoning you up and asking you all the questions in the world about the report on title is a client who doesn't ask the questions. Because the idea is that they're supposed to read what we say and take our advice so they can move forward and buy their dream home that isn't, built on an ancient Indian burial ground or something.
Absolutely. And yes, we want to make sure that, as I said, we've put everything into clear English so that people appreciate it. I think we've probably got slightly off topic, haven't we, in terms of
how to speeding
things up.
This is the problem with lawyers. We like to talk. This is the problem. This is why we have to be brought back to the point.
The next point we can pick up on is dealings with estate agents, both from ourselves and also with clients dealing. One thing I always like to say is that in terms of buyer and seller, they each have lawyers looking after themselves. In terms of the deal, the estate agent is looking after the deal, not either party. But there are things certainly that we can do with them which will make life smoother for us all. And make sure that we're more likely to return their calls, they're more likely to return our calls, and that we can all help them look after the deal.
No, there's a lot of animosity between agents and solicitors on social media, on LinkedIn in particular, and I don't quite understand it because we're supposed to be working together. And obviously they can their job is to manage the transaction, and because that's their obligation. Our job is to look after people and get the legal sorted. One thing I don't understand. Maybe I'm in the minority here. I keep my agents on when I'm emailing the other side for replies to inquiries or vice versa. I keep the estate agent on copy. I don't necessarily expect them to weigh in and have an opinion on my view of the UK Finance Handbook. But if they don't know what's going on, they can't manage expectations. Do you think is that too much, or is that?
That's certainly one effective way of keeping them in the loop. And most of the sort of ideas we have for speeding up conveyancing are really to do with communication and, making sure everybody knows what's happening and why. So that's certainly really useful. I sometimes find that inter-lawyer communication, particularly when we focus on the law, cannot be the most interesting for some other people. So sometimes it's better to forward things afterwards to the agent, to the client, so that we can actually put our précis to explanation.
Are you suggesting that people don't find the Building Safety Act a fascinating read and they want to know our opinion on it? Are you saying, really?
Particularly section 26, subsection 2b, of course.
Do not talk to me about that section. It's the bane of my life, honestly.
No, it's about communication, about making sure something is useful for the specific audience you're going to. But a lot of the time, agents would like or benefit from being copied in on some emails. But again, sometimes it might be easier to give them a set of précis or an update.
No, with agents, the one thing, and I do agree with this, is the view that just phoning for a pro forma update, because, I would hope a lot of modern agencies don't have this, but I remember my friends who used to work there said, no, I need to make X number of calls a day. And I said, why? To show I'm busy. But you are busy. Yes, but they can't see that. So they'd phone up asking for an update, and my response would be, but you're on the copy. You've seen the emails. You go, yes, I know, but I have to make this phone call. Why? So I do appreciate that. But if you need... I was saying agents, if you actually need to understand the grey area, because obviously there are lots of things that can get missed in communication, particularly if you're not if you're speaking legalese and you don't necessarily understand what's important, what's a red line issue, what's just something nice. I think having a relationship with the lawyer, picking up the phone and say, look, very quickly, is this something they need to be worried about? And the answer is often yes or no, or, well, it really does depend. Just ask the question.
Absolutely. I always think maybe is the answer of choice.
It depends on context, everything else.
And I suppose we have sort of touched on one other issue, which is inter-solicitor communication and how that can be helpful to speed things up.
It is. it makes my heart sink when I get the memorandum, the deal memo, which comes through saying who's dealing with the other side, and you're just given a generic email account or a generic, you're not given the named person dealing with it, which for some deals is fine. You're buying an off-plan new build property and you've got some big developer. Okay, that makes sense there. But for a normal human being transaction, it would be nice to have another person there, because there are some firms where it's literally just they've got one person doing this, then another, then another. The more people added onto a deal, the more complicated it gets, the more convoluted it becomes. And just being able to, get hold of someone and, build a rapport and talk to them directly speeds things up massively.
Absolutely. And I understand with lots of those, it's the sort of forward production line approach, isn't it? Which works for a lot of things, but not necessarily for conveyancing and its intricate moving parts. And it is a lot easier, certainly, if we're dealing with human beings and they're dealing with, us, which I hope is much the same thing. But there is a lot that solicitors can do between ourselves. And the nice bit about conveyancing is we do work with everybody from sort of individuals that own their own little practice through to sort of what they call the magic circle and bigger firms. Sometimes we will get emails or letters or even faxes still.
Oh, yes, we do get faxes still.
Dear Sirs, written in the Victorian era that Jacob Rees-Mogg would enjoy. But most of the time, there is a good information stream and exchange between us, or there's the potential for that. But we can all make sure that we work as smoothly on that as possible, and there is certainly time to be gained.
But what about, all the people saying that this, because we're all very arcane and backwards, and we write with fountain pens and quills, and we send urchins running along to deliver notes. It seems some people say that the silver bullet that will solve all this is just to make everything online, paperless, and there's the right bit of software, AI will come and replace us all. I'm not 100% sold on that. What about you?
I'm 100% not sold. There are lots of things that can be done with technology, which will help speed up and streamline things. And we've seen some of this with elements of online searches, the land registry prioritising upfront information. So you can find out who owns the vast majority of property in the UK within 5 or 10 minutes by interrogating the land registry's database. But in the same way that certainly I can ask Alexa to play my favourite songs and she will choose entirely different ones to play back to me, I think AI, certainly at the stage it's at the moment, will have a broadly similar but much more disastrous impact if it were applied to the conveyancing transaction. You can look at 1,000 different leases and you will have at least 1,500 different interpretations of one standard clause within them. So for AI to pick the right one out will be, as I said, like asking Alexa for a jazz cover from the 1950s and being given ABBA.
I do remember it was the classic 5-word conveyancing horror story. It is a standard lease. There's no such thing. The one technological innovation that's come along, which I'm a massive fan of, is digital signatures, DocuSign in particular, which the land registries, approved of finally, simply because it's made life a lot easier. Some documents I always prefer to get them, posted over, but sometimes you just can't do that. And the idea of getting DocuSign to get certain documents signed up immediately, get them returned in a secure fashion, I like. It's still, this is me personally, it frustrates me when I've got a deal ready to go and the other side says, oh no, we're waiting for our client's part of the signed contract. I'm sorry, are you from the past? What is it? What? I rember COVID, the idea of getting, waiting for post to be delivered to my flat in Kennington. No, it wasn't going to happen. So that I found is much, much easier. It's still an extra level of explaining to clients how it works and walking them through, because as you say, we act for people, we act for all sorts of people. Some people who are very sophisticated users of legal services and technology, they get it. And other people like little old dears who need to be walked through a few things, or sometimes we still get them in. I like electronic signatures. I find it speeds things up.
Yeah, obviously we have a wide and diverse client base, and we need to make sure that any solutions that we put in place are useful for the individual, which is going back to my analogy of the forward production line, everything is more of a sort of bespoke Savile Row suit, at least the way Bishop and Sewell like to look after clients. And so there will be times when that's appropriate. I think, particularly for contracts and so on, it is very useful. I think we'd have to be a bit cautious that there are various procedural safeguards in terms of having documents witnessed and to make sure that that isn't circumvented under DocuSign and equivalence is one thing. And the other thing, which is only much more minor, is that just occasionally you can find, particularly with online documents, that colours can be changed in plans.
Oh, God.
At least with the old original wet ink documents and deeds and so on, we could have something where you could go back to the original source material. If that's...
No, I think most clients, they think that we need documents to be witnessed and co-signed and all this other stuff because that's just what you do. We don't think about it. But there is a very good reason that some documents need to be witnessed as deeds and everything. And it's not just because the law says it has to. It's about evidencing it. Because again, and I think I made a very flippant comment at the beginning of all this, is that the conveyancing, it's absolutely fine. We can do it in 5-10 minutes, as long as you don't care about anything that's going to go wrong and come back and bite you on the bum. A lot of the stuff that we do, the thing that takes time is we check the lease and the 1,500 interpretations, because there might be an argument. Whereas, what is the most common and most forceful interpretation? Someone might claim that it's fraud. Well, let's check the witness. Was it done properly? Is it the right witness? Money laundering. Oh, no, we think this person has processed a crime, though. So most of the things we do, and I say this, is litigation backwards. And while there are things that can be done to sped up, and I think we've talked about some really common sense ones, some things take as long as they take. You can't speed up.
Yes, or at least not without identifying, quantifying, and hopefully solving risks. To give some much more mundane examples, we can certainly buy a flat, but if you don't wait and get the management information, you will also be buying the seller's debt on their service charge, if there is one, or you will suddenly find out that there are major works coming up to the block to replace the roof, which you would have renegotiated the price if you had known that in advance. Another favourite one is, yes, we can go without the searches, but if you happen to find out afterwards that the property is being compulsorily purchased by the government to put a big new shiny infrastructure project through it, you might not be too happy if that's the destination of your dream home. So you're right, we can do a lot of things to speed conveyancing up. But what we can also do, I think, talking about communication, is communicate that there is a much wider package of risks and issues that we look at, quantify, manage and assist you with on your purchase or your sale. And it's looking after that much wider set of interests that takes a lot of time. And whilst we can cut down on that, we will be potentially exposing you to adverse risk, other issues that come up that you are taking on board with your new property that you may wish you had known about.
So that's why my grandmother's conveyancing only took 45 minutes and my one took 8 weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, there is something about documents getting longer each year. We are in practice, and the issues that we have to look after getting wider. And
my 110-page report on title is a work of art, Tom. How dare you?
Something like that. But yeah, I mean, there are always things we can do, and we're happy to talk through how to balance off risk against speed, but be aware there is an element of trading one for the other.
I mean, I remember, when I came on board, when I started long ago practicing, though, I just remember that's when the Land Registry just changed the fees and they were trying to incentivize people to move away from the paper forms to make the application process more speedy, and that's less than 10 years ago. So, I mean, just thinking, 2030, if we can think that far ahead, if we're still here, what do you think will be different? I mean, if you had to guess. And yes, we will be doing this podcast in a few years, and we'll be comparing the answers.
In fact, we might still be doing this particular podcast at that point. I think, they always say that you overestimate the speed of change in 2 years and underestimate it in 10. I think there will be a sort of more dovetailed drawing together of technology for lots of these things and greater online systems. So there will be less paper documentation. However, I think to a certain extent that will probably generate its own. The solicitor is taking on yet a wider range of issues they need to advise you on. Rather than necessarily being much quicker, although many individual stages will be quicker.
So if we were to boil all of this down to a single sentence, I think we're saying is just talk to people.
Absolutely. Communication is the key. Thank you very much.
That's all for today's episode of Listen Without Prejudice. Whether you're navigating a property transaction, a corporate, commercial or family matter, we're here to guide you every step of the way. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes, where we'll continue to explore the latest trends and challenges across our core practice areas. Do you have a question or topics you'd like us to cover? Or do you want to reach one of our experts? Feel free to get in touch via LinkedIn or through our website, bishopandsewell.co.uk. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to join us in our next episode, where the conversation continues. Until then, take care.